Okay, so for this question, have a wee read. Basically, straight line, and you're pulling out that this is your x coordinate and this is your y coordinate. So A, the point would be this, and B, here and here, that's your x and your y. Whenever I do straight line, I always take three headings. I always take point, gradient, equation. And you should know the gradient equation is this, and your equation of a straight line is this. Okay, so I'll put that in green. So you should really remember in this, and don't forget your three headings: point, gradient, equation. So when you write down your points, label them up: x1, y1, x2, y2. Doesn't matter which is point 1, point 2, it's absolutely fine. Makes more sense to have the point 2 as the bigger one. Numbers come out a bit nicer. And then you're working out your gradient. Here there was a wee bit of cancelling to do. And then you're doing your substitution and working through. Now the hard bit I think here was known to multiply through by 20 just to get rid of that 20. So when you get an algebraic fraction, you want to get rid of that fraction. Okay, so you times everything by 20, times that by 20, times that by 20, and then you're moving your 900 over, dividing by 20, and that's you finished. And don't forget it's in terms of W and S. Okay, so straight line question, get your points labelled up, do your gradient, there's a mark, cancel out those, yeah. And then you're substituting into this formula and make sure it's in terms of what it's asked. Okay. So I just thought I would do that quickly because it's more of an algebra question. Okay. So yeah, not an algebra question, but I just thought I would show you the working for that one. All right. And then the last bit that they kind of throw in is calculate Dave's wage in a week when his sales are 1,000. And all that means is substituting 1,000 for S. So the wage is going to be 1 over 20 times 1,000 plus 150. So that is the same as 100 divided by 20. So cancel your zeros. 100 divided by 2 is going to be 50. So you get 50 plus 150. So that's 200 pounds. So just one mark for that one. Okay. So for straight line, point, gradient, equation, remember that. Look at how they've drawn it out. Make sure you use the right terms at the end. That's the tricky bit. That's an easy mark to lose. And also note you're getting a mark for a gradient and then a mark for the substitution. So most of the marks are up to here. Just this bit and this bit. If you can't do that last bit because this is tricky, don't worry about it. But that was a bit mean of them, I think, making the numbers quite big. And yeah, people don't seem to like the fraction in front here, but it's simple to get rid of it. We just times everything by 20. So by timesing this side by 20, this disappears, and we're just left with this. Okay, nice one. In equations, we solve them exactly the same as equations. The only rule we have to remember is when we multiply or divide by a negative, we have to flip the sign. And at the end, that's rule number 1. And at the end, if we have something like 5 is less than x, we have to change the side, get x on the left, but by flipping it over, we flip the sign. Apart from that, it's basically an equal sign. So first of all, I would get rid of this bracket. 1 take away x, take away 4. And we're trying to get x's on one side, numbers on the other. So I'll group my like terms. 1 take away 4 is -3. Okay. I'll add x to both sides. So that's 3x. And some people do like a little working line over here, where they just see what they're doing, group the terms, adding x to both sides, whatever you want. And for this one, I'm going to divide by -3. So divide by -3, this becomes 1. The sign flips, and this would become -x. Maybe I should have just divided by 3, but it becomes -x. 3 divided by -3. And I'll flip that around again. So say -x is greater than 1. So I've just done my flip. And just a wee flip. And I don't want to finish off with -x. I want to finish off with just x. So I'm going to times through by -1, which will give me x. And I'll flip it again for -1. So a little bit quite. There's easier ways to do it, I'm sure. But that's how I've gone with it. I think at this point, maybe I could have just divided through by 3, yeah, I probably could have just divided through by 3. That would have made my life a bit easier. So maybe here I could have said, right, -3 greater than 3x. If I divided through by 3, I'd get -1 greater than x. And then I could have flipped it around to say x is less than -1. That's maybe an easier way of doing it, actually. But the point is, you only need to know these two rules. You multiply or divide by a negative, that sign flips. And if you just flip things round, the sign also flips. Okay, so just take your time with that. That's the only two rules. Apart from that, exact same as an equation. Okay, so this you should be thinking is a difference, not a difference of original, reverse the change. You're going to get a compound question or reverse the change, probably. If it's a compound, you'll have a time in there. If there's no time, you're thinking different, reverse the change. So a band sold 2,400 tickets. Good for them. This was 75% of the number of tickets sold for a gig in Glasgow. So that represents 75%. I can actually draw that out if I want to. So I can say 2400. That represents 75%. Yeah, they're the same. 75, a little imaginary bar, that's the same as that. How do I work out what they sold for the Glasgow gig then? Yes, I just had to reread that. I was a little bit confused. So it sounds as if they've obviously sold more then in Glasgow. Yeah, that number was 75%, so it's more. Now, what we're trying to do is get back to 100%. And the eagle-eyed amongst you has probably noticed that you're able to get to 25% and then to 100% by dividing by 3 and then timesing by 4. So if I divide this by 3, I'm going to get 800. Times it by 4, I'm going to get 3,200. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Okay, divide by 3 times by 4, and that starting point is probably the hardest bit to get. Okay, so maybe sometimes they say it's reduced by 25. So you'd say right 100. You always start with 100, and then you would add or subtract what's telling you. But this is just telling you this was 75%. So this time is an equal. Now you can visually do that here. If you think on this, right? I'm trying to get up to 100%. So it's like, well, how do I get to 100%? Well, I need to add on 25%. Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, what's 25%? Well, if I've got 75%, what do I have to do to get 25% from 75%? Well, that's clearly a third of 75, isn't it? So if I third it, I'm saying that each 25% represents 800. So if I want to add on another 25%, yeah, then I'm adding on another 800, which is just, not 8,000, another 800, which is just 800 times by 4. So you can kind of do it this way as well with your blocks and putting it into 10% or 5% with a calculator. Just find 1% and go up to 100. So divide by this number times by 100. But you've got to get a bit more creative with the non-calculator one. I think the one that I saw that was, so you maybe get you're thinking about you get your 50%. So that's dividing by 2, obviously, if you've got 100%. And within that, you've got 25%. So that means you're dividing by 4. And this is the one that really gets people. Divide that by 2. That's 12.5%. So 12.5% is dividing by 8. So watch out for that. That sometimes can, but it's pretty mean. So if you end up with, if I had 2,400 is equal to 112.5, I'd be saying, well, how do I get from 112.5 down to 12.5? I would divide that by 9 because there's 9 12.5s in there. Okay? And you would see that because you could just draw another one on. Yeah, and that would give you 112.5%. But yeah, so I think that's the trickiest one, is the 12.5. But you can literally just draw these out, is my point. Okay. Next one, this is a great 2 marks to get as well because it's very visual and you know or you don't. Okay, so the A is all about the height and the B is how much it's moved up or down. Sometimes you get a number in here, which is how many waves have you got in 360. In our case, we've got 1. So you see that number would just be 1. So that's how many you've got. We'll do the moved up or down in a sec. A is the height, so 5 to 1. This full height is 4, and it's not really the height we're after, actually. It's called the amplitude. It's the distance from here to here. So that number in front is going to be 2. Okay, so I've got 2 in there because 5 take away 1 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now that means if I had a normal wave would be even top and bottom, so it would start on 2 and go down to -2, 2 to -2. Mine doesn't though. Mine's on 5 and 1. Now, how's that? How do you get from 2 to 5? Well, you've obviously added on 3 in the same way that -2 plus 3 would give you 1. Okay? So get the height first. It's the difference in these two divided by 2. And then how much has it moved up or down? Well, it should be like this. So 2 to 5, I've added on 3. Nice 2 marks for you there.